Freddie Mercury made his final appearance on stage on August 9, 1986. He was cautioned by his physician not to perform. His voice was deteriorating, and during Who Wants to Live Forever, a fan's life would end in the crowd. Everyone was astonished by what transpired next, though. From Mercury's unexplained disappearance following the performance to John Deacon's violent outburst, we now disclose the true events of Queen's farewell performance. On September 5, 1946, Freddie Mercury was born in Zanzibar, a tiny island that was a part of a British colony. One of the oldest religions in the world, Zoroastrianism, was practiced by his Parsi parents. The birth of Freddie was unique in many respects. Later in life, he thought that his 4 extra teeth from birth had given him a special vocal range that allowed him to sing in 4 octaves. The African, Arab, and Indian cultures that surrounded him as a child had an impact on his subsequent style and music. Freddie's life took a drastic turn when he was 17. Families like his were forced to flee the dangers of the 1964 Zanzibar Revolution. His family fled to England when thousands of people were killed. However, Freddie was born and raised in India. His parents enrolled him in St. Peter's, a British-style boarding school in Panchugni, when he was barely 8 years old. For Freddie, this school, which is close to Mumbai, became significant. He started referring to himself as Freddie there. It's also where he first fell in love with music. His parents were advised to spend more for music lessons when a teacher recognized his aptitude. This choice ended up transforming my life. Together with 4 pals, Freddie started his first band, the Hectics, when he was in school. They sang rock and roll tunes by well-known performers including Little Richard and Cliff Richard. Even at the age of 12, Freddie demonstrated his innate musical talent. Lata Mangeshkar and other Bollywood singers were also quite popular with him. His future performances were influenced by his soaring voice. Freddie started fusing Western and Indian influences at a young age, which eventually helped Queen's music stand out. When Freddie's family relocated to England, they took up residence in a modest home in Feltham, which is close to London. At first, life wasn't easy, but Freddie was adamant about pursuing his goals. In 1964, he began studying art at Isleworth Polytechnic before transferring to Ealing Art College. Freddie developed his graphic design talents at Ealing, which he would subsequently use to the creation of Queen's iconic emblem. Freddie took on odd jobs, such as dishwashing at Heathrow Airport, to help support himself. Tim Staffel, who played with guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor in the band Smile, was introduced to Freddie while he was at Ealing. They made friends with Freddie, who frequently offered suggestions for their performances. Freddie became Smile's new vocalist in 1970 when Tim departed the group. It sounded large and powerful, so he proposed that the band be called Queen. In June 1970, they performed as Queen for the first time at a charity function. In 1971, after testing out several candidates, the band finally recruited John Deacon as their bassist. Freddie also made the decision to adopt Mercury as his last name at this time. The sentence, "Mother Mercury, look what they've done to me," from a song he wrote gave him the idea. Queen didn't become popular right away. When their debut album was released in 1973, it barely reached number 83 in the US and didn't even appear on the UK charts. When Queen II, their second album, was released in 1974, it did not perform much better. In the UK, it barely peaked at number 49. Sheer Heart Attack, the band's third album, finally put an end to their frustration. Their big break came with the song Killer Queen. It peaked at number 12 in the US and number 2 in the UK. One evening, Freddie Mercury sat at his piano and wrote Killer Queen. Normally he started with the music, but this time he came up with the text first. The story of a sophisticated high society prostitute was the subject of the song. The sound, as much as the plot, was what set it apart. Brian May used a 6-pence coin as a pick to produce a stunning guitar solo. Additionally, they used various production techniques to add layers of sound. In addition to making Queen famous, the song led to some internal strife among the group. Roger Taylor was concerned that Queen's lighthearted, whimsical sound could give the impression that they weren't a serious rock group. Actually, Killer Queen nearly missed their place on the album. It was the last to be recorded, and its inclusion was hotly debated. Bohemian Rhapsody followed. This song made Queen famous when it was published in 1975 as a part of a night at the opera. Making it wasn't simple. The recording process took 3 weeks. It cost £40,000 to make and featured 180 distinct overdubs, making it the most costly song ever at the time. It was an odd and unique song. It has 3 separate parts, a loud rock finish, an opera-like middle, and a quiet, emotional opening. Executives at EMI didn't think it would succeed. They requested that the band shorten it for radio since they felt it was far too long. The band declined. Rather, their management handed the tune to well-known DJ Kenny Everett in secret. Fans adored it when he performed it 14 times in a single weekend. For 9 weeks in a row, the song was at the top of the UK charts. Following Freddie Mercury's death in 1991, it gained even more traction and remained at the top of the charts for an additional 5 weeks. It wasn't as popular in the US at first, peaking at number 9 in 1976. However, with its usage in the film Wayne's World, it rose to number 2 in 1992. It became one of the best-selling singles in UK history and sold millions of copies. The music video game was also altered by Queen. Filming the Bohemian Rhapsody music video took about 4 hours and cost £4,500. It was revolutionary even though it was straightforward. A technique known as visual feedback was used to produce the well-known image of the band's 4 faces in a prism form. It gained notoriety and established music videos as an essential component of song promotion. Queen continued to produce outstanding videos after that. Inspired by the British soap series Coronation Street, the band in I Want to Break Free wore women's clothing. Despite its boldness and humor, MTV banned it in the United States. At the same time, Radio Gaga was among the priciest videos available. £100,000. It included snippets from the Metropolis movie, for which Queen paid $100,000. Queen's videos were amazing, but so were their live performances. They employed a massive custom lighting setup with 168 lights and 12 aircraft landing lights during their A Night at the Opera tour in 1975. It required its own generator because it was so large. Took several hours to prepare. Their lighting setup at their renowned Wembley performances in 1986 had expanded to nearly 1,000 lights, including a huge 5-ton crown-shaped frame. Over time, Freddie Mercury's stage persona also changed. Due to his shyness, Freddie frequently stayed behind his keyboard during Queen's early performances. In fact, the famous microphone stand he used sans the bottom part was created by mistake. When the microphone stand broke one night while Freddie was performing, he decided to stick with it because he liked the freedom it provided. His style became increasingly bold over time. Inspired by Jimi Hendrix, he started painting his nails black in 1973 and began dressing in glam rock costumes created by Zandra Rhodes. He donned his well-known Harlequin outfit in 1976. Before every performance, a tight outfit had to be sewed upon him. By the 1980s, Freddie had changed once more. He developed a thick beard and embraced a more masculine appearance, dressing in leather leggings and military-inspired coats. The New York homosexual club culture served as the impetus for this shift. He maintained his humorous demeanor. He wore a mustache while performing drag in the I Want to Break Free video, which sparked debate and perplexed some people. As time passed, Freddie's theatrical antics grew increasingly outrageous. He began riding on the shoulders of a crew member disguised as Darth Vader while singing We Will Rock You during the 1982 Hot Space Tour. He once performed in Japan, taking off his costume piece by piece as the performance progressed, until he was only wearing shorts. Every performance was unforgettable due to Freddie's charisma and audacious manner. The 1980s saw many changes for Queen and Freddie Mercury. With their album Hot Space, released in 1981, the band experimented with a new sound. Numerous fans disapproved of Freddie and John Deacon's attempts to explore with disco and funk music. When the song Body Language was released in 1982, it sparked even more debate. At the time, the music video and lyrics were too daring, and it was banned by MTV. Fans were offended by this, but Freddie continued to experiment with new musical concepts. Mr. Bad Guy, Freddie's debut solo album, was released in 1985. He spent 2 years in Munich working on it, meticulously examining every aspect. The album showcased Freddie's creative side with its abundance of dance music and synthesizers. He even wrote, "This album is for my cat, Jerry," as a dedication to his pets. In addition, there are Tom, Oscar, Tiffany, and every cat lover in the globe. Screw everyone else. It did poorly in the US but made it to the top 10 in the UK. Nevertheless, it inspired Freddie to take on more. He later collaborated on the CD Barcelona in 1987 with opera diva Montserrat Cabal. The title track, which combined rock and opera, demonstrated Freddie's vocal prowess. The song became the Olympic anthem for Barcelona in 1992. Unfortunately, though, Freddie didn't live to witness its performance. Queen was having trouble as a band at the time. They went on tour following the release of Hot Space. However, at the end of 1982, they made the decision to stop. There was discord in the band. "We despised one another for a while," as Brian May later acknowledged. During the recording of their 1984 album, The Works, things deteriorated. Brian became so irritated that he left the studio and contemplated quitting for hours in a park. To everyone's surprise, John Deacon abruptly left for Bali without warning. Freddie sung South Pacific's Bali High in jest when he learned about it. Outside the band, there was also turmoil. Queen played in Sun City, South Africa, in 1984. Throughout the apartheid era, racist laws in the country infuriated a lot of people. The United Nations denounced the band and the musicians' union banned them. Later, in 1985, the audience even jeered them during a performance in Rio de Janeiro. The turmoil was exacerbated by Freddie's private life. The band had numerous issues because of his manager, Paul Prenter. In interviews, Brian May just referred to him as the person who took care of Fred without even mentioning his name. When Queen performed at Live Aid on July 13, 1985, everything changed. Freddie chose to perform despite his vocal issues and general lack of health. They gave one of the best live performances ever when they took the stage at 6:41 p.m. They performed excerpts from their greatest hits, such as Radio Gaga, We Are the Champions, and Bohemian Rhapsody, in 21 minutes. Freddie led the audience in applauding throughout Radio Gaga, making it a memorable occasion. The concert was viewed on television by more than 1.9 billion people. "You bastards, you stole the show," Elton John said to them backstage. The show gave the band new life and revitalized Queen's career. Queen began recording their next album, A Kind of Magic, following Live Aid. It was intended to serve as the soundtrack for the immortality-themed film Highlander. In order to give the album a contemporary vibe, they started recording in 1985 using new digital technology. Roger Taylor was furious when Freddie altered the original version of the title song, A Kind of Magic, which was based on a passage from the film. After seeing a scene from the film, Brian May wrote another song, Who Wants to Live Forever. It had a large, dramatic vibe because of the 80-piece orchestra. Queen organized their largest and most thrilling tour to date in 1986. It was something they had never done before, and they called it the Magic Tour. In just 8 weeks, they would perform 26 gigs in 9 different European nations. The tour's stage was spectacular. It was enormous. 160 feet in diameter. Featuring 2 lengthy promenades reaching out into the crowd. It required more than 8 miles of wires to power everything, making it one of the biggest ever constructed. The 20-foot-tall video screen required its own generator due to its size. The music could be heard miles away thanks to the sound system's extreme power. Some even voiced their displeasure with the loudness in the neighboring villages. Freddie Mercury took the stage at Knebworth Park on August 9, 1986. The time was 6:41 p.m. He was unaware that it would be his final Queen live performance. The gathering was enormous. The exhibition had drawn 120,000 attendees. The first chords of One Vision began, and the excitement was amazing. Freddie was dressed in tight pants and his iconic white tank top. He was in poor health, but he exuded confidence. His doctor informed him that morning that he had an irritated throat. Freddie ignored him when he told him not to perform. He would not disappoint his admirers. His voice broke slightly when he sang, One Man, One Goal, One Mission, but nobody appeared to mind. The band had a backup set list ready behind the scenes. They were concerned that Freddie could find the more difficult songs difficult, but he proved them incorrect as the evening progressed. The audience had come for the entertainment, and he wanted to deliver it. His voice broke on a high note when he was under pressure. He turned to the audience and asked them to join him in singing instead of pausing. This added to the specialness of the moment. The band performed Who Wants to Live Forever at 8:03 p.m. It was among the night's most poignant moments. As though Freddie were singing about his own life, the songs had a distinct impact. At 8:17 p.m., Bohemian Rhapsody arrived. Freddie gave it his all, even though it was one of the most difficult songs in Queen's repertoire. Even though the operatic portion was typically played from tape, he sang portions of it live. The audience erupted when he hit a high note he hadn't tried in years. Are the Champions was the final song of the evening. Freddie's voice broke once more, but this time he held the note even longer rather than retreating. The noise of the gathering could be heard in neighboring communities. The band began playing God Save the Queen at 8:59 p.m. They would typically exit the stage at this point. However, Freddie remained. As the music played, he remained motionless, his eyes closed. Freddie turned to face the audience as the last chords faded. "Thank you, lovely people," he murmured, bowing deeply. "Sweet dreams and good night." The time was 9:02 p.m. It was Freddie Mercury's final live performance. However, things were not going well behind the scenes. Something unexpected happened backstage. The quiet and composed bassist John Deacon behaved in a way that had never been witnessed before. He flung his bass instrument across the dressing room just 18 minutes before the show. Roger Taylor's drum tech nearly got hit. People were taken aback. Because in his 15 years with the band, Deacon has never been this angry. "I can't do this anymore," he subsequently informed Brian May. "It's excessive." He gave off the impression that this would be their final performance with Freddie. Additionally, Deacon clashed with the sound engineer and insisted on having his bass levels adjusted. Deacon performed one of his greatest performances ever when he took the stage, despite the fact that he was obviously distraught. Tragic events also occurred among the crowd that evening. Michael Jennings, a 23-year-old fan, passed out while listening to the song "Who Wants to Live Forever?" The distance between him and the stage was roughly 50 meters. Despite their prompt arrival, the medics were unable to save him. At 9:43 p.m., he was declared deceased. While Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen was playing. It wasn't until after the show that the band found out. Jennings suffered from an unidentified cardiac ailment. And it was made worse by the concert's excitement and the sizable 120,000-person crowd. Jennings had won his ticket in a radio sweepstakes just 2 days prior. He was having a great time, according to his companion Sarah. "It was the greatest night ever," he insisted. Then he just fell, without warning. Stricter safety regulations for future large concerts were a result of this tragic incident. It wasn't typical of Freddie Mercury to leave the stage so soon after the show. Freddie would typically stay to talk with the crew and enjoy the post-show festivities. This time, however, he left quickly after the last song concluded. Before the show, Freddie received a call from his doctor, according to Peter Freestone, his assistant. It must have been concerning because it concerned his health. He appeared to be burdened by the performance's physical demands as well. Even his silver bracelet, which he had worn to every performance since 1977, was left behind by Freddie. Later, a cleaner discovered it and got it back. Freddie sat quietly on the train back to London, wiping his eyes with a handkerchief and gazing out the window. He was obviously lost in thought. Mercury stumbled backstage for a moment. "I don't know whether I can do this," he murmured to Peter Freestone, his personal assistant and old friend. After the performance, Roger Taylor also recalled a disturbing experience. In the changing room, he discovered Freddie sitting by himself. "Darling," Freddie murmured, looking up at him, "I think I've given it my all." Roger believed that Freddie was simply exhausted at the time. He now understands, however, that Freddie was bidding him farewell. In his studio, Roger has a drumstick from that evening, in remembrance of their previous performance. Former public figure John Deacon described it as the most difficult performance of his life. He acknowledged that he cried during these life-changing moments because he thought it might be their final playdate. That night felt like the end of an era for all of the band members. Freddie Mercury had many close relationships, hardships, and unexpected events during his life. Mary Austin was one of the most significant individuals in his life. Through interviews he conducted, mostly for David Wick, he revealed details about our connection. Mary was 19 and Freddie was 24 when they first met in 1969. They moved in together, became engaged, and fell in love fast. However, Freddie came out as bisexual to Mary in 1976. "No, Freddie, I think you're gay," Mary responded calmly and honestly. Although their romantic relationship was altered by this event, they remained lifelong friends. Mary, according to Freddie, was his one true friend and could never be replaced. Even after their relationship ended, Freddie continued to care for Mary. In 1980, he purchased an apartment for her near his own home in Kensington. He left her half of his riches, including his mansion, when he drafted his will. When his health deteriorated, Mary remained by his side, and when he died, she did as Freddie requested and kept the location of his ashes a secret. Freddie was involved with other people. In 1985, he met hairstylist Jim Hutton, with whom he remained until Freddie's passing in 1991. However, Freddie's life was not easy. Barbara Valentine, an Austrian actress, was also close to him. and they occasionally spent time together as a trio. The fact that Freddie's relationships frequently overlapped demonstrated the complexity of his personal life. Freddie spent his entire life struggling with his sexuality and public persona. He was born in 1946 and was raised during a period when it was illegal to be gay in many areas. Although he had to conceal it, he understood from an early age that he enjoyed guys. Freddie would jest or say something ambiguous, such as referring to himself as gay as a daffodil, when others inquired about his sexual orientation. It was his way of being playful while avoiding the reality. Freddie was more than just a performer. He was a creative person. He loved painting and went to college to study art and design. He accumulated rare and exquisite items over the years, such as Japanese woodblock prints and paintings by Dali and Picasso. In addition, he enjoyed collecting vintage glass and even had his cat's pictures commissioned. His residence was packed with items that demonstrated his deep appreciation of beauty. For many years, Freddie Mercury kept his fight with AIDS a secret. He kept most of his close friends and the general public in the dark. He discovered he had HIV in April 1987, although some symptoms appeared as early as 1982. That year, while visiting New York, he sought medical attention for a spot on his tongue. It could have been a sickness precursor. Mercury refuted all of the health-related rumors despite this. He was unable to rest because of the press. In 1986, British tabloids began to report about Mercury's health, particularly The Sun. He probably remained silent because of these publications as well as the stigma and fears surrounding AIDS at the time. The band hardly ever discussed it, even in Queen. According to guitarist Brian May, Mercury didn't want them to ask questions, so they didn't. Only those closest to him were aware of the reality. According to Peter Freestone, his assistant, Mercury had witnessed numerous acquaintances pass away from AIDS and was always thinking about it. He would actually talk to his buddies after talking to his kitties. He would summon them. Mercury wished to keep himself and his loved ones safe. He issued a statement to the public just one day prior to his passing. He gave an explanation for his secrecy. All those years, Mercury became weaker and thinner throughout time, and people continued to speculate. He eventually revealed his AIDS diagnosis to the world on November 23, 1991. He died the following day. Years of silence and conjecture came to an end with this. Mercury never stopped making music, even when he was severely ill. Queen recorded the album Innuendo in 1990. To assist him, the band adjusted their itinerary. After 3 weeks of work, they took 2 weeks off to allow Mercury to recuperate. By then, the band was aware of the severity of his situation. According to Brian May, Mercury pushed himself to continue working even though doctors informed him he didn't have much time left. The Show Must Go On, one of the tunes, came to represent his tenacity. May questioned Mercury's ability to manage the difficult voice. "I'll fucking do it, darling," Mercury said after taking a shot of vodka. Then, in a single take, he gave a flawless performance. Mercury continued recording after completing Innuendo. He began working on songs like Mother Love in May 1991 but was unable to complete them. May 22, 1991, was the date of his last recent recording session. A Winter's Tale, which he recorded, was included on the posthumous album Made in Heaven. Mercury worked relentlessly to leave behind music that would endure forever, even as he battled a deadly illness. On February 18, 1990, Freddie Mercury made his final public appearance at the Brit Awards. Queen was recognized for their exceptional contribution to British music with an award. Fans were astonished to see how exhausted and emaciated Mercury appeared. Nevertheless, he came to pay tribute to his band and supporters. Brian May delivered the majority of the speech on stage. "Yes, he came to watch us perform. Freddie came to observe a little group we had called Smile, and he was packed with energy and enthusiasm. All Mercury could say was good night and thank you." These were his last comments in public, a brief but heartfelt goodbye. Mercury's health rapidly deteriorated in his final months. He remained largely at home in Kensington, West London, by June 1991. Mary Austin, his ex-partner, and close friends frequently paid him visits to provide assistance. "It took me a long time to fall deeply in love with this man." His health deteriorated. He became blind, was unable to move much, and spent a lot of time in bed. He stopped taking all of his medications, with the exception of painkillers, on November 22, 1991. He and Jim Beach, the Queen's manager, prepared a public statement that same day. On November 23, the declaration was made public, confirming his diagnosis of AIDS. At the age of 45, Freddie Mercury died on November 24, 1991. AIDS-related pneumonia was the cause of death. Jim Hutton, his companion, said Mercury was serene and radiant prior to his death, characterizing his last moments as serene. Mercury's music continued to gain popularity after his passing. His final recordings were included in Queen's 1995 album Made in Heaven. More than 20 million copies were sold, making it a worldwide success. The legacy of Mercury lives on. Queen's greatest hits CD is the best-selling album in UK history, and his music has been streamed billions of times. Mercury's passion and voice endure, inspiring admirers worldwide.